little intro first. So, Microdesk, if you're not familiar, we're an AECO industry consulting firm. We're actually international now. We have 12 locations in the US, one in the UK. We've established in 1994, and currently we have over 140 consulting specialists on staff. What that means is people like myself that have worked in the industry. My background is about 10 years as an architect, and we have other people whose background are civil, engineering, design, development. So we don't just understand the software, but we also understand how it's used in the real world. And as part of that, we're able to provide services for creating building information modeling, workflow assessments, mentoring, and application development, and pretty much anything and everything that you might need. Yeah. So with that out of the way, today's presentation is going to be brought to you by myself. My name is Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist at Microdesk. I get to play around with all the neat tools, confirm that not only are they cool or interesting, but they actually are beneficial, and that there's a real solid workflow and a business practice for them. And I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. So, connecting project teams with collaboration for Revit. So our agenda today is I'm going to go over what C4R is and what collaboration for Revit is, go over how it actually benefits the project team members and how you can use and access this. I'll be using PowerPoint for the first part of this, and then I'm going to be moving actually into the software and show you how you can use it and access that from multiple access points, mobile, web, and desktop. Now, before I get rolling though, I do want to actually ask the audience just a couple of quick questions just to get an understanding of what you're currently doing and how you're using your software. So first one I want to ask is, how are you currently coordinating with other people? So is anybody here using Revit Server? Is anybody sending files just typical email or FTP or Dropbox? And is anybody currently using collaboration for Revit? All right, so kind of what I expected. The majority of people are using sort of traditional methods of sending people files back and forth. Okay. And just two more quick questions. How are you actually sharing content? You know, do you access content remotely, or is anybody using the web or Newformer or just typical email? Okay, and then last one before we get rolling, I promise. How are you currently marking up or reviewing your drawings? So are we doing the printouts and marking up on paper? Are we using PDFs? Are we using cloud services, or a mixture of 4 different things depending on the project and who's running it? Awesome. So yep, kind of like I expected, the majority of people are using PDFs. It's still definitely the most used medium. Hopefully after this, we'll have a few more people willing to try out Docs or Team though. Great. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating in that. Definitely appreciate your insight. So let's get rolling. So what we're going to be looking at today is going over some of the coordination challenges. So part of the problems that we're running into is, number one, our workforce is getting a little bit more spread out. We're finding that more people are working from home or working remotely or coordinating with people who aren't in the same state, let alone the same office. And then when we start talking about how do we coordinate with them, there's always this fight where, okay, well, we use FTP, well, we use Dropbox, well, I prefer Box. And trying to find something that everybody can either coordinate on or agree with that is beneficial and can handle all the different things that we're trying to share. So what Autodesk is focusing on is something that can help address that challenge. They realize that in the process of going from the initial design, napkin sketch, to the end result of an actual built project, whether it's a building, whether it's site work, whether it's road or infrastructure, you're going to have a lot of different people that are a part of that. And to help alleviate or work on this, they've really been focusing on the BIM 360 infrastructure, the BIM 360 suite of tools. Now, the ones that we're going to be focusing on today is BIM 360 Team and Collaboration for Revit. So those two are rooted heavily on the design side of this wheel. Now, for those who aren't aware, what C4R is it's a way of collaborating in Revit. You've got your different models. You've got the mechanical engineer, the architect, the structural engineer, and anybody else who happens to be working inside the Revit model. And rather than actually setting it up to the point where everybody, I send you my file, you send me your file, we're actually working together collaboratively. But it's more than that. There are different aspects of collaboration for Revit, and one of them is BIM 360 Team. So you can kind of see that as like the outer ring on this. What that allows is all the other people that are working on the project but might not be working in Revit. It gives them the opportunity to participate, to view, to see what's going on without having to take 5 other programs and sort of put them into the mix. So if you want to look at the little bit of details of how this works, typical process is I'm using Revit and we have a single firm and everything's on our network. What the Collaboration for Revit actually does is it takes that central file, so that file that we're all working with, and puts it in the cloud. Then from there, different firms are all accessing that cloud server. So rather than having, I have my central file, you have your central file, and if we want to see them in the background, we have to link them, but we have to email them or upload and download. We don't need to do that anymore. We're actually all working off the cloud files. We're still working on them on our computer in our office, but we're able to sync and work back and forth and see exactly what everybody's doing. And again, I'm going to actually hop into Revit in a bit and show you this. Now, some of the benefits of this are not just the fact that we can actually work together on models online and we don't have to be in the same office. Big part of this is being able to actually communicate, and there's a tool called the Communicator that comes with this. This makes it easy to actually have a direct chat window. You can also send screenshots directly part of this, and you can have a team chat where you're talking to everybody else on the project or on different teams. Now, from the standpoint of a project manager, it's not bad. You can only add people to this that are working in the Revit model, so you don't have to worry about people using this to talk to friends that have nothing to do with the project. Now, the other thing is it knows what people are doing to a certain degree, and it knows who's actually in the project. So when I talk about contextual awareness, it can show that somebody is actually in the process of syncing. It can show me if somebody is in the current model that I'm in or in one of the other models that are in the project or a part of the project. Another one here is the integrated work sharing feed. So if anybody here has ever used the Revit work sharing monitor, that essentially is built into this. So that way I can track who's syncing. How did it go? Did it fail or was there an issue? So it allows me to get a glimpse of what's happening with everybody else in the project. So if we're getting ready to print, I can use this communicator to send out a message to everybody on the team saying, hey, I need everybody to sync, so that way I can actually set the print and I have all the latest information. And then I can use that same tool to track and see, did everybody finish syncing? Now, excuse me, I keep mentioning BIM 360 Team, and that's because it's a fundamental part of collaboration for Revit. Now, you can use BIM 360 Team completely on its own. You can use it as a cloud sharing and storage site. I can view models and content, but if I'm using collaboration for Revit, I'm going to be on Team. That's actually where my central file will reside. So by syncing my model, I'm actually syncing it to BIM 360 Team, and it gives me the ability to find and search. I can track what I'm doing. I can see who else is in there and follow the activity. It gives me the benefit of being able to view my model live in a web browser or on a mobile device. I can do live section cuts. So if you've ever had a project manager who liked the idea of Revit but was nervous about using Revit, this allows them to interact with the model, to put in comments or markups and be a part of the project without actually needing to know how to use Revit or be in Revit or scare their team because they're in Revit. And again, this allows me to use multiple devices to be able to track and follow it. And another really big feature from a project management standpoint that I don't think a lot of people are aware of yet is the fact that you can actually track the changes of a model automatically. I don't have to do any work for this. No one's sending me a transmittal saying we moved these 20 things. I tell it, I want you to look at this version and that version and tell me everything that's changed. And when we start talking about all this, versioning and viewing, there is a large amount of content that we can upload to the cloud servers, in this case BIM 360 team, and view it. Now, a lot of people like Dropbox. It's a great tool, and it's designed more for Office. So if I'm uploading Excel or Word to Dropbox, I can view it in the app and the website, and everything's great. It doesn't really lend itself well to AEC, though, and that's where this comes in. It's designed for that. Not only can it view and read and save and track the project documents like Word and PowerPoint and images, but it's also designed to work with things like my Rhino, my SketchUp, my Revit, Navisworks, AutoCAD. I can upload my content to Team and view it and share it that way. Okay, enough of the PowerPoint. So time to actually hop into the software. So what I'm actually going to do is hop into Revit now. Now, one of the cool things about collaboration for Revit is that as you're using it, your typical day-to-day workflow doesn't really change. The biggest change that's going to happen to your normal draft person is where they actually look for the file. So when I go to Open, rather than navigating to my Office directory, I'm going to click on BIM 360 Team, and it's actually going to show me all the projects that I have been invited to. Now, in here, I can see a lot of different projects. So if I click on this one, I can open that, and I'll see the different files that are inside of there. Now, a key thing on this is not showing me all of the files or projects that I have access to. It's showing me all of the projects that I have access to that are the same version as the Revit that I am in. So we actually did get a question on this earlier. When you're working collaboratively in Revit, everybody needs to be on the same version. I can always upgrade from an older one, but I cannot downgrade. Same exact thing on here. If the project is on 2017 or 2018 or 16, everybody needs to be on that same release to work with collaboration for Revit together. So in that case, I would open up my file. It'll download it from the cloud, and then from that point on, it'll always update my local file with the changes that are happening from the internet. So if I have a 300 meg file, I'm not opening up or downloading 300 megs every single day. I'm just downloading the changes to my file. So as I work from the day-to-day, I go about my normal business, make my changes, edits, markups, whatever has to happen, and then I would synchronize. And sync to central hasn't changed at all. The only thing that's happening is that now when I sync, notice it's actually syncing to the cloud. It's not syncing to a local network drive. But to a normal user, that's transparent. It's not going to affect how they actually work. To somebody who is sort of the model manager, they're going to have a couple of extra features. So if I say Manage Cloud Models, this will show me all the different projects that I'm a part of. And in the case of the one that I'm in right now, if I go down to my, let's see here, there we go, data set, I can see the models that are in here. Now, one thing you might notice is that I have this little box with an arrow. However, this one here is a green checkbox. What's happening is that if I see that little green dot, that lets me know that the version that I am in right now in Revit is the same as the version that people will see on the website. If I look at this one up here, that means the version I'm in Revit is not the same as the web version. Now, that's not a mistake or a problem. What that means is that I'm working in Revit, and everybody else who works in Revit, we're all going to see the most recent model. I sync to central, you reload latest, you see my changes. That's as it should be. But if I invite someone just to view the process, they're not actually a part of my project, they're just going to the website and actually looking at the progress of the project. Maybe it's the client. I don't necessarily want them to see my work every 5 minutes. I might want to go to the format where I publish the work to them every Friday or once or twice a week. In that case, that's what I'm doing right here. I'm essentially publishing my work to the cloud for others to be able to view. And Revit takes care of all of that tracking. So I can upload this, I can publish it, I can view the different versions of my model, And unlike the desktop where I tell it how many backups I want to keep, this tracks all my backups. I can see when I saved, when other people saved, what version it is. I can roll back if need be. So I have full control over all of my backups to archive or to manage my project. Now, one of the things I mentioned before was my communicator. So when I bring this up, I can see that I'm here. I see which project I am currently active in. And right now I can see that the other people that are a part of my project are not currently working because their status is showing up as gray. So if they were actually in one of the files in the project, not even the one that I'm in, but maybe the mechanical or the structural, they would show up as green, and I would see which file they were in. And I can also see the status of the other projects that I'm a part of. I can move into them. If I need to, I can instant message or chat with other people and see what's going on. And I can move back and forth between multiple projects, as most of us probably are, working on more than one project at a time. And then as I work on this, I can see what the status is, what's going on, when it's saved last, and how things are going on. And I can actually modify some of my settings in here to keep it on top, or to say, you know what, only open it up when I want to. But that's one of the nice features about C4R is that it's not going to really change your day-to-day workflow. It just enhances it with better coordination abilities. Now, there's one other thing here called publish settings. I'm going to touch on that in a minute or two once I get to the web portion of this. So you're working normally, day-to-day. I publish to the cloud, and now other people in my project, they'd actually like to see what's going on. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open up my web browser for a second. And I've gone to the BIM 360 team site for Microdesk. So I can see the different projects that we have. I can see the current activity to the site. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hop into the project that I was just inside in Revit. Now, in here, I can manage my project. I can see who's a member of it. I can check my activity. I can see if there's any discussions or a calendar. So if I wanted to put something on this calendar to ensure everyone on this project knew when our deliverables were, what the due dates were, what had to be done by a specific point in time, I can put that in there so it's in a central location to everybody, not just the people in my office. And I also have the ability to have a wiki. The wiki could essentially be the project BIM execution plan. Again, if I want to put it in a central location, it tracks versions. People can get notifications when it gets updated. I can put that there. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to click on my file. And again, I can see that I'm currently in version 4, and I have typical sharing and download features. So click on this, it'll think for a second, and then I can view that. And key thing here is I don't need plugins. I don't need to download anything extra. I'm just using a web browser, and now I can actually navigate and interact with my Revit model right here. If I click on elements, I have the ability to isolate, hide, focus, or look at the properties. The information that happens to be in these objects will be visible. Now again, this is more of a viewing tool. I'm not going to start changing information here. But this allows me to start to infer information from the project. Now, one of the things I mentioned I would cover again when I got in here was what I could see. So if you remember back inside of Revit, I had that publish settings right up there. What that actually allows me to do is control what views inside of BIM 360 Team are visible. So again, if I am publishing this for people to see, people that might not be part of the design team, whether it's the client or an outside consultant, there might be working views that have notes or working views that have, kind of looks like a mess if you're not aware of what's happening in the design. I don't want those to be visible. So I can choose exactly what views I want to be published with that version of my file. So when I'm looking at this now, I can see my 3D view. If I want to move to a different view, I can. And it's not just 3D views. If I want to look at elevations, sections, floor plans, or even the sheets, I can do that as well. So if I actually go to my site plan, this will switch from looking at a 3D view to my site. Not a very well done site plan, but a site plan. And when I'm looking at my sheets, I actually have the ability to do dimensions as well. I can get measurements off my drawing. And I can also print this directly to a PDF now too. And for now, I'm just going to hop back into a 3D view for a second. And if I'm looking at something and I'm not sure about it, I have the ability to sort of disassemble it a little bit. So for section boxes like this, where I'm really trying to get an understanding of how something is coming together, how is it being constructed, this helps me get an understanding of it. And additionally, I can always just do a live section cut too. So I can sit here and just drag this through in the web browser. So I have a better understanding of where things exist and how things are. Now, outside of this, there's a lot of other tools that I can use. I can do my markups, I can do my coordination, and I can put my comments in here. So if I have somebody on the team that is reviewing this inside of BIM 360 team, so maybe they're looking to move away from printouts, or they're trying to lock in on one thing, I can use this to actually track my markups. I can create clouds or callouts. I can put in text and comments. I can actually see when that was done and what version of the file I did that in. And then somebody can respond to me, okay, it's all fixed. And if I have something I want to show to somebody, but I don't necessarily want them to be a part of the project, one of the things I have the ability to do is do a live review. What a live review is that I can invite somebody to see this. They're not a part of the project, but it's sort of a guided tour. I can actually lock my camera to their camera. So when I'm saying, okay, now if you look at this, I know they are looking at the exact same thing that I am. So it makes it easier to control what other people are seeing. And when the live review is over, so is their access. So you can manage that. A question that came in is, can you use this for spatial coordination on a project? Yes. So if I want to, I can create my section boxes. I can bring this in. I can actually rotate the section box if I want to cut around something and move through the process. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is that if you're using collaboration for Revit, you're going to have to use BIM 360 Team. That's where it stores its central file. But you can use Team completely on its own. And in that case, I can still upload, just drag and drop my Revit files to the cloud, and I can still use this kind of a feature to mark up, comment, and view those models. Now, one of the other things I mentioned that I really like this, like in here, is the ability to compare the versions. So in this case, I'm going to say compare versions. It opens up another tab, and I choose which versions do I want to look at. So in this case, I'll say version 3 against 4, and I tell it what view I want to look at for this. So it'll think for a second, and when it finishes, what's going to happen is that anything that hasn't changed will be a translucent gray. Everything that's been added will be green, demolished will be red, and modified will be yellow. And the wild thing about this is that when I say modified, I'm not just talking about they moved it left or right or up and down. When I say modified, it also looks at properties. So if I've updated a door to have a fire rating or to have a hardware set, I can actually go to my modification type and say, all I want to know is if they've made property changes. Because I can filter, I can search, and I can look through this. If I click on something down here, it'll actually take me to it. And one of the neat things here is that if I click, I can actually animate the process. So, okay, it moved. Where did it move from? I can go from 3 to 4, and I'll actually see. It'll tell me specifically the distance it went, and it'll show me physically how it actually changed. So it makes it a lot easier for me to actually understand what's happened. So if I'm receiving files from my other consultants, no problem. Now I can actually say, okay, well, this is the new one they sent me. what am I looking at? What did they change? Did they change the things that I expected? Are there little things that I would have completely missed had I not been using something like this to track all of the changes? And there was a question earlier about the versioning. And basically, if you're in Revit, everybody has to be in the same version. However, all the things that I'm showing here are available for all the versions of Revit that work with collaboration for Revit. So 18, 17, 16, you're fine for C4R, and all these features will work in Team as well. Okay. Now, there we go. So we've got our BIM 360 team on the website. I'm able to interact with our models. I can see the comments that people have. Now, let's say what I'm doing is I'm on my way to a project meeting, and I need to show something, but I forgot to take the model with me. No problem. Let's say you have a tablet. In this case, I'm going to go to the same project I'm looking at now, and you can see the question about 18, no problem. Works on 18 as well, and 15 too. This data set just happens to be the 17 one. So I can see the exact same models that I had online. Click on that, that'll open it. Now I don't have all of the same features, but if I want to navigate the model, I can look in here. If there's something I need to actually see, again, that 1 and that 2, notice the same thing, 1 and 2. My comments that I have are part of the project. They're not part of the website. They're not part of the mobile app. It's part of the BIM 360 team. I can click on that, and that shows me who did it and shows me the note. So I can go back and forth and see the comments. And if I need to, I can always say add another comment. And post that. And now I can see that. And that was in version 4 of the file. Because it knows not just when from a timestamp, but when from a model progression that I put that in there. And if I needed to do a markup, I would just tell it I want to do a markup, and then I can draw. And once I've opened up this file, I can still get my properties and information out of it. But because I've opened it up, it's now on the iPad. So I can actually open this up offline. So if I'm going into a meeting that has really bad reception, or I'm going to be in an attic or a basement, and I need to have my drawings with me to actually review things or to mark them up, I can use this for that. And again, I can see my activity in the project, and if I've set up a wiki, I can see it here. Now, in terms of a wiki, I'm going to switch over to another project we have. So if anybody is curious about what models might look like on side of Team, definitely reach out to us after the webinar, and we can invite you to an introduction project that we have. And one of the things we actually have in here is our wiki. And that is basically just formatted just like you would a Word doc. It has some information like frequently asked questions, how you can use things. You can put in graphics and information. So a lot of our clients that use this, if they put information in the wiki, it's contact information, who to reach out to for what people are working on the project. And you can have multiple wikis, you can edit that, and you can put comments on it too, just like anything else. But one of the main things here is that everything is meant to be very user-friendly. I can always look at the different versions of the file. If something goes wrong, I can always promote an older version and roll back. And I can always see the overview of my project and the overview of each individual file at any point in time. So one of the main things here is that, again, collaboration for Revit, its focus is being a collaborative environment. And there's two aspects of it. You've got the BIM 360 team and the collaboration for Revit. And I'm going to start taking care of some of the questions and answers now. So we got a handful in here. There's one question in here about, do you still need to use the copy monitor? I would say yes. The reason why I say that is that the compare changes is going to show me what's changed in the model, but it's not going to update my model. So if I'm using copy monitor, say between the architect and the structural engineer to ensure that my grids are staying coordinated, this service will tell me if the objects have moved, but they're not going to be able to move elements in my file. So if you're an architect and MEP, same thing for fixtures or different services like toilets or lights or things like that that we're coordinating via copy monitor. So you would still want to use that in addition to it. Another question is, excuse me, how an owner might actually use collaboration for Revit. A lot of times if we're talking to owners about something like C4R, they're looking at C4R from the standpoint of facility management or maintenance. So now I have a site that can hold all of my drawings, my models, my information in a place that is easily accessible to the people that they want and easily understandable. So if I need to go find out where something is, I can search in the model, I can draw things on the model and say we need to fix this. But it's also from a design standpoint, an opportunity to allow them to engage the project team. So it's easier for them to understand what's happening when you can use something like that guided tour to show them what your intent is with the design. Question here regarding Revit Server, which is typically hosted on your own internal network versus C4R. Is the sync and startup time when using Revit Server different or slower than C4R and BIM 360? Autodesk's goal is to have it be about the same, if not better. And what we found is that a lot of this comes down to how good your internet speed is. Now, some clients that we've worked with, we found that their intranet between offices is actually slower than the internet going outbound. So in those cases, their C4R saves actually are faster than their Revit server saves might be. And while I'm answering the last couple of questions here, I'm just going to put up one more poll, please, if you wouldn't mind answering. Question here about, can you assign markups? At the moment, no. So you can assign markups and issues inside of BIM 360 docs. Team, not so much. Team is meant to be more of a collaborative, everybody's working together on things, where docs is more almost a construction document management or construction management tool, where you can assign things to specific people. And that ties into another question. Does BIM 360 Team replace Glue? No. So big feature here is Team will show me what's changed. Glue actually allows me to connect to Navisworks, but it can also show me clashes. So currently the Team is only showing me how things have shifted from version to version. Glue will actually show me where objects are interfering or having problems. And also, tying to the same question, Glue can do the assigning markups to specific people. Okay. There was a question, is this done automatically by C4R? I apologize, I don't remember when that came in. I'm going to guess that is referring to the comparisons. Yes, I don't have to do anything other than tell it the view I want to see and the two versions I want to compare. If I'm getting that wrong, please just type in another question and I'll take care of it then. Okay. Can you export markups for tracking and saving later? Yeah, you can save those out as images. The comparison feature that I showed you before, where we actually can have, let me hop this back in here, where I'm looking at the different changes. This actually can be saved. So if I click on that, that will actually save in a CSV all the different changes, so I can actually sort of have a record of what's going on. Another question, good question there. What are the version number in the browser that I'm viewing? So if you notice here, that's version 4, 3, 2, and 1. So what I'm actually going to do is leave the browser for a second and go to Revit. I'm going to say Manage Cloud Models. So this is the file that I was just looking at online. Oh, sorry, thank you very much. Cool. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. So when I'm looking at this, I can see the different versions of the file that I'm looking at right now. So currently I'm looking at version 4. I apologize for that. Now if I switch back to Revit, what I'm actually looking at is the same file, and I'm going to say I want to see view versions. And what you're going to notice is that these don't necessarily line up. Again, the version that I see in the cloud are just the published models. The version that I see inside of Revit is every single time I sync to the central file. So again, it's very much like my internal saving process. I'm on version 54, but I've only published it out 6 or 7 times. Okay. So question here, what is the difference between syncing with the cloud model and publishing your model to the cloud? That's exactly what we just looked at. So when I sync, I'm saving the Revit file for everybody else who's using Revit so they can see my changes. But when I publish it, that means that somebody who goes to just the web or the mobile version, they're going to see that change. And it's always going to publish whatever the most recent Revit save is at that point in time. Another question, do all team members need to have C4R, or is this something a model manager can control? Anybody who is just accessing the website, they're just using Team, they don't need C4R. All they need to do is be invited to the project, and there needs to be a seat of Team available for that person, or an entitlement. However, everybody who's using Revit is going to need an entitlement for collaboration for Revit. And for using the BIM 360 iPad app, the app itself is completely free. And if you are using A360 Drive, you would use the BIM 360 Team app to view that too. But all you need to access Team is just an invite to a project, and the person inviting you would just need to either have a free seat to assign you, or your company would have one. Question here, can you create a backup or recovery file from each sync? Yes, you can. Every one of these backup files I can roll back to at any point in time. I can restore back very quickly. And I can also go to all the ones online and download those. So if I actually go back up to my project folder, I can move or delete here, and I can download there. So there currently isn't an automatic setup for automatically archiving or downloading, but you can download your backups. Oh, and the automatic question from before, does it automatically manage the cloud models? It will not automatically publish for you, and you can't set a schedule currently. I believe if you have somebody who can program for your office, you can take advantage of the Forge APIs and then take advantage and look to do that. But out of the box, no. Right now it's a manual process where I would go up and say I want to publish my models. So BIM 360, a couple questions here regarding is BIM 360 free? So we're talking specifically BIM 360 Team. You can be invited to multiple team hubs or sites, and you can switch between them by clicking on your avatar in the corner. Now, you can create your own free BIM 360 team. You'll start off with a trial, and then after the trial ends, you'll be able to use it for yourself. There will be a certain time frame. Sorry, there will be a certain limit in the amount of content that you can put up there, and you will not be able to use it for collaboration for Revit. Now, having an actual team site that is paid, the price of that is going to be determined by how many people you invite. So for every 5, 10, 15 seats, the price actually goes down per person. I believe it starts off at $10 per person per month. Each person that you add gives you 500 gigs of storage. I haven't talked to anybody yet who's run out of space. And in terms of, can you use that for sharing project standard families? You can use it for sharing anything that you want. The key thing here is that if you want to link to another file online, it has to be another collaboration for Revit published file. But if I want to use Team to share files with other people, it could be Word, Revit, Navisworks, doesn't matter. And access to BIM 360, again, the service itself is a paid service, but I can give out invites to people and use my own seats. So if I want someone to access it, they don't necessarily need to have purchased it. Good question. Can you have live linked AutoCAD files stored and accessed on C4R BIM Cloud? No, but that doesn't mean this won't work. So what will happen is if I put an AutoCAD file on the cloud, same as the family question, I can use it to share with other people, but I won't be able to link to it inside of Revit. Now, let's say that I'm in Revit, and what I'm doing is I'm going to link in a CAD file. And when I do that, I link it in off of my local network, which is going to be different from my engineer's network. As long as nobody unloads the CAD file, that will actually be cached and travel with the model. So they won't actually need to see it on their network for them to view it. Now that's not going to work for Revit files, but it will work for CAD files. Good question. No, you cannot. So the question I just got that I wanted to look into is, can you insert 2D views from file and pull details from a model that's actually living in the cloud? No, you couldn't. So at least not at the moment. So what you would have to do is just download that file, and then you can do it from it on your local machine. Good question, though. I hadn't seen that before. Yes, you can. So the question I just got is, can you create a log of comments? So if I'm talking about here inside the communicator, one of the things I can actually do, let me hop into one of these, is I can actually save the comment or chat history. Now, that might not be where you're asking for, though, but I can also come over here to my activity or my discussions, and that I can actually save out as well. So question about linking CAD files into Revit, mentioned that before. If what I do is I link it in and it's only accessible on my network, not the engineer or a different office, as long as nobody comes in and actually unloads the file, it'll stay cached with everybody else. So can we create a log of markups? So when I'm actually looking at my model, let me hop into it real quick here. So I've got my comments here. One of the things that you can do is you can essentially save these, but it's not like some of the other services that are a little bit more specific or a little bit more locked down. I do have the ability to actually delete a comment. So that is something to keep in mind. And yes, this webinar is actually being recorded. It will be posted to the Microdesk YouTube site. So if anybody wants to review this, it should be up there, but the latest by next week. Alrighty. So if anybody has any other questions, definitely please feel free to reach out. We actually have a couple of upcoming webinars too. The next one's going to be on September 19th. It's going to be on connected BIM. It's a term that's been kind of being thrown around here and there, so we're going to go over what that is and how that's going to affect the industry and our workflows. Then we're going to have another one in October for InfraWorks as a design tool. So it's, a lot of people know of InfraWorks and they think it's more just for doing civil design, but we can use it for architectural and other tools as well. And again, anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. 1-800 number, team at Microdesk, email any questions, and you've got our YouTube channel there. That's where this will get posted up. Last question here, going from a free service like Dropbox to BIM 360 Team. The big thing is Dropbox doesn't allow you to view your AEC documentation. And if you're using BIM 360 Team specifically as just a file storage, you're not going to be looking at it, then you're not going to be taking advantage of the other features. But if you're looking for something that you can mark up, you can view, you could do section cuts. You can't even compare Dropbox to that because it can't do that. And again, the price does come down as you add more people to it. Cool. Well, everybody, thank you very, very much for your time. We definitely appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you again on a future webinar, but if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again, and everybody have a great day.